I have spent several decades watching the world transition from one era of computing to the next, and I can tell you that we are currently standing at the edge of a shift so profound it makes the birth of the internet look like a minor adjustment. Most people are moving through their lives today with a sense of security that is, frankly, misplaced because they are measuring their safety by the rules of a world that no longer exists. I want you to look at your career, your savings, and the skills you have spent years refining, and ask yourself a very difficult question. If the fundamental cost of intelligence and reasoning drops to near zero tomorrow, what is left of your value? This is not a question meant to cause panic, but rather to invite a necessary kind of clarity. We are entering a period where the traditional structures of work and wealth are being rewritten in real time by a cycle of innovation that does not care about our comfort or our past achievements. I have seen companies that were thought to be invincible vanish in a single cycle because they failed to recognize a phase shift until it was too late. The same thing happens to individuals. You might feel safe because you have a degree or a specialized title, but in the coming decades, specialization without adaptability is a recipe for obsolescence. We are moving away from an economy of knowing and into an economy of iterating. If you are still operating on the assumption that the next 10 years will look like the last 10, you are already falling behind. The danger is quiet. It doesn't arrive with a crash, but with a slow, steady erosion of your relevance until one day you realize the market no longer speaks your language. I've seen this pattern repeat in the semiconductor industry, in software, and now it is happening to the very fabric of human productivity. I am not here to give you a roadmap for quick success because the world is too complex for simple maps. I am here to help you see the system as it actually is, so you can stop reacting to the present and start positioning yourself for the inevitable. Those who understand the underlying physics of this change will find opportunities that are currently invisible to the masses. Those who ignore it will find themselves working harder and harder for a diminishing share of a world that has moved on without them. It is important that you stay with me until the very end of this observation, because the traits we are going to discuss are not just tips, they are the fundamental requirements for maintaining your agency in an age of automated intelligence. If you value clarity over comfort, you may want to subscribe and join this conversation, because understanding these long-term cycles is the only way to ensure you are the one driving the change rather than being driven by it. Let's look closely at what is actually happening behind the headlines and the noise. To understand why the world is shifting so violently, we have to look past the daily stock fluctuations and the temporary hype of new gadgets and instead look at the tectonic plates of the global economy. For the last 40 years, we lived in a world defined by the retrieval of information. We built a society where the highest value was placed on the ability to store data, recall it, and apply a fixed set of rules to solve predictable problems. This was the era of the personal computer and the internet. It was a world that rewarded the expert who knew where the information lived. But that world is ending. We are moving from the era of retrieval into the era of generation. This is a fundamental change in the physics of how value is created. In the old world, you went to school to learn a specific craft, and that craft sustained you for 30 years. You were a tool wielder, but today, the tools are beginning to wield themselves. When I look at the landscape of global industry, I see a massive decoupling happening. On one side, you have the old infrastructure, the traditional paths of corporate management, manual coding, and administrative expertise. These are based on the idea that human labor is the primary engine of intelligence. On the other side, we have a new reality where intelligence is becoming a utility, much like electricity. It is being generated at scale in data centers, and it is becoming cheaper every single day. If you are standing on the old path, you are effectively competing with a commodity that is becoming infinitely abundant. This is why the next 10 years will feel so disruptive. It is not that jobs are simply disappearing. It is that the nature of work is changing from the production of content to the orchestration of systems. Think about the history of the steam engine or the electric grid. When electricity first became a utility, the people who were experts at manual lighting didn't just lose their jobs. The entire way we designed cities and factories changed. We are in that exact moment right now with artificial intelligence. The big picture is that we are transitioning from a world of software as a tool to software as a teammate. This changes the environment you are operating in because it removes the premium on basic technical competence. In the past, if you knew how to write a specific type of code or manage a specific legal process, you were protected by the barrier of entry that education provided. Today, those barriers are melting. The new reality is that the cost of marginal intelligence is trending towards zero. When something becomes that cheap, the world finds ways to use it everywhere. It will be in every car, every hospital, every office, and every creative studio. This creates an environment of extreme urgency. Not the kind of urgency that requires you to run faster, but the kind that requires you to stop and rethink your entire direction. The world is moving toward a model of accelerated iteration. In the previous decades, a product cycle might take 5 years. Now, we are seeing cycles that happen in 5 months. If you are operating at the old speed, you are effectively standing still while the ground beneath you is a moving walkway accelerating in the opposite direction. I have observed this in the way we build chips at NVIDIA. We no longer just design a piece of hardware, we simulate entire universes to let the hardware learn how to work before it even exists in the physical world. This is the digital twin philosophy, and it is a metaphor for how you must now approach your own life. You can no longer afford to learn by trial and error in the real world alone. The stakes are too high and the pace is too fast. You must build a mental model of the future that accounts for the fact that human-level reasoning is no longer a scarce resource. Many people see this and feel a sense of dread, but I see it as the greatest expansion of human potential in history. The old way was actually very limiting. It required you to spend the first 25 years of your life accumulating knowledge like a reservoir, only to spend the next 40 years slowly draining it. The new way allows you to be a river. You are no longer defined by what you have stored, but by how much energy and insight you can channel through the system at any given moment. The urgency comes from the fact that the window to position yourself is closing. As these systems become more integrated, the gap between those who can orchestrate them and those who are replaced by them will grow exponentially. This isn't a wealth gap in the traditional sense, it is a capability gap. In the coming decade, a single person with the right survival traits will be able to do the work that once required a department of 100 people. This means the rewards for being at the top of this new curve are astronomical, but the floor for those who refuse to adapt is dropping. We are seeing a shift from knowledge workers to purpose workers when the how of a task is handled by a machine. The only thing that matters is the why and the what. Most people have spent their entire lives focusing on the how. They are experts at the process, but the process is what is being automated. If your value is tied to a process, you are in the path of the storm. If your value is tied to judgment, vision, and the ability to connect disparate dots, you are the one who will thrive. This change is inevitable because the economics of it are too powerful to ignore. Companies that don't adopt these new realities will be out, competed by those that do, which means the job market will force this change upon you whether you are ready or not. It is a long cycle system. We are only in the first few minutes of the first hour of this transformation. When I look back at the dot-com era, everyone thought it was over in 2001, but the real impact of the internet didn't even start until 2010. We are at that same point. The noise you hear today is just the beginning. The real, deep transformation of the global economy, the part where the very concept of a career is redefined, is what happens over the next 10 years. You have to understand that the world doesn't owe you a living based on what you learned yesterday. The world only cares about what you can solve today using the most efficient tools available. This is a calm warning. The safety net of expertise is being pulled away. The environment has changed. The atmosphere has changed. And the traits that allowed you to survive in the old atmosphere will not work in the new one. You must become a different kind of organism to survive in this high-intelligence, high-speed ecosystem. It requires a shift from being our to being a learner. In the old world, the person who had the answers was king. In the new world, the person who asks the best questions and can navigate the answers provided by machines will be the one who leads. This is the big picture. It is a world of infinite leverage for those who know how to use it, and a world of increasing irrelevance for those who cling to the old ways of working. You have to decide now which side of that decoupling you want to be on, because the middle ground is disappearing. To navigate the next decade, we must move beyond the idea of static skills and instead adopt a framework of survival traits that are designed for a world of constant flux. The first and perhaps most critical trait is the transition from being a specialist to becoming a first principles architect. For decades, the system encouraged us to crawl deep into a single hole to learn one specific craft, one specific software, or one specific legal niche. We were told that specialization was the only path to a high income. But in an era where artificial intelligence can synthesize specialized knowledge in seconds, the specialist is the first to be commoditized. The value has moved from the content of the work to the architecture of the problem. Being a first principles architect means you don't just know how to do a task, you understand the fundamental physics of why the task exists. If you are a coder, you don't just know Python, you understand the logic of how data moves to create value. If the language changes, or if the AI writes the code for you, your understanding of the architecture remains intact. You become the one who directs the intelligence rather than the one providing the manual labor. Think about the math of this over a 20-year horizon. If you spend your time perfecting a narrow skill that is 80% likely to be automated, your career trajectory looks like a bell curve that is already beginning to slope downward. But if you invest in understanding the systems and the first principles, your leverage grows as the tools become more powerful. You are effectively buying an option on the future. The second trait is what I call radical adaptability, or the ability to unlearn as fast as you learn. Most people view their education as a finished building. They add a few decorations over the years, but the foundation stays the same. In the next 10 years, you must view your knowledge as a prototype, something that is constantly being tested, broken, and rebuilt. I have seen many brilliant people fail because they were too proud of what they knew 10 years ago. They are emotionally attached to their expertise. But the market is unsentimental. It doesn't care how hard you work to get your degree if that degree no longer solves a problem. You must be willing to walk away from your own success to find the next version of it. This is the difference between a system that is brittle and a system that is anti-fragile. A brittle person breaks when the environment changes. An anti-fragile person uses the chaos to get stronger. The third trait is the mastery of human AI orchestration. We are moving into a world of infinite leverage. In the past, if you wanted to scale a business, you had to hire more people. You had to manage personalities, payroll, and physical space. Today, the leverage is digital. One person can now command a fleet of intelligent agents to perform research, design, coding, and marketing. This is a massive opportunity cost for those who ignore it. Imagine two individuals. One works 40 hours a week using traditional methods. The other spends 40 hours a week learning how to orchestrate AI systems to do the work of 40 people. Over a year, the second person hasn't just worked harder. They have lived 40 years of productivity in a single year. The gap between them isn't linear, it's astronomical. If you aren't learning how to be the conductor of this new orchestra, you are effectively choosing to remain a manual laborer in an age of automation. You are trading your limited time for a wage while others are using the system to create exponential output. The fourth trait is high agency judgment. As the cost of generating content, code, and data drops to zero, the world will be flooded with noise. In a world of infinite noise, the rarest and most valuable commodity is judgment. Judgment is the ability to look at 10,000 AI-generated options and know which one is the right one for the specific human context. Machines can calculate, but they cannot yet care. They can provide answers, but they cannot determine what is good or meaningful in a social sense. High agency is the refusal to wait for permission or instructions. In the old corporate world, you waited for your boss to give you a task. In the next 10 years, the boss will be the person who sees a problem and uses their orchestrated leverage to solve it before anyone even asks. This is a shift from being a task taker to being a problem owner. Finally, the fifth trait is intellectual humility combined with a long-term vision. You must be humble enough to realize that the tools you use today will be obsolete tomorrow, but visionary enough to see the long-term cycles of where humanity is going. Most people live in 90-day cycles. They worry about the next paycheck or the next quarterly report. But wealth and impact are built over 20-year cycles. If you look at the math of compounding, the real gains happen at the very end of the curve. If you keep switching paths because you are looking for a shortcut, you never get to the part of the curve where the magic happens. You have to pick a direction based on the fundamental shift toward intelligence and stay in that direction even when the specific tools change. Contrast the person who spends $50 on a temporary lifestyle upgrade today with the person who spends that same amount of time and energy mastering the systems of the future. Over 20 years, the first person has nothing but memories of a vacation, while the second person has built a platform of leverage that can sustain them for the rest of their life. The opportunity cost of staying comfortable in your current role is the highest it has ever been in human history. We are not just talking about losing a job, we are talking about missing the window to participate in the most significant wealth creation event since the Industrial Revolution. If you ignore these traits, you aren't just staying in place, you are actively moving backward as the rest of the world accelerates. You must treat your career and your life as a high-performance system that requires constant tuning and upgrades. The framework is simple: understand the principles, stay adaptable, orchestrate the tools, exercise high agency judgment, and play the long game. Those who master these 5 traits will not just survive the next 10 years, they will be the ones who define them. They will be the ones who look back and realize that the disruption everyone else feared was actually the greatest gift they were ever given. I have to be honest with you. Most of the advice you hear about the future is designed to make you feel good, not to make you ready. We live in a culture that prizes hustle and grind, but the brutal reality is that working hard on the wrong thing is just a slow way to fail. You can be the hardest working person in the room, but if you are working in a sector that is being hollowed out by the falling cost of intelligence, your effort is being poured into a leaky bucket. The system does not care about your effort. It only cares about the value you can capture. There is a very uncomfortable truth we have to face. Many of the skills that made you successful over the last decade are exactly the ones that will make you a liability in the next. We have been trained to value process, compliance, and predictability. But those are the very things that machines do best. If your job can be described in a manual, it is already gone. You just haven't received the notice yet. A lot of people think they can just add a little AI to what they are already doing and they will be fine. They treat it like a new coat of paint. This is a dangerous misconception. This isn't an additive change, it's a subtractive one. It subtracts the need for mediocrity. It subtracts the need for the middleman of thought. In the past, you could make a very good living being pretty good at something. You could be a decent writer, a decent accountant, or a decent designer and live a very comfortable life. That middle ground is being vaporized. We are moving toward a winner. Take all ecosystem where the top 1% who can orchestrate these systems will capture 99% of the value, while the rest are left to compete for the scraps of manual labor that machines can't yet reach. It's an uncomfortable reality, but the average person is in serious trouble. Shallow thinking tells you to learn a new tool. Deep thinking tells you to change your identity from a worker to an owner of outcomes. You also have to understand the trade-offs. To gain the leverage I'm talking about, you have to give up the comfort of the path. The path is the degree, the corporate ladder, and the steady 3% raise. The path is safe, but the path is also a dead end in a world of exponential change. Choosing to master these survival traits means choosing a period of intense uncertainty. It means being the only person in the room who is saying, this old way doesn't work anymore, while everyone else is still collecting their bonuses. It's lonely, and it's difficult. Most people will choose the short-term comfort of the status quo because the alternative, admitting that your current expertise is dying, is too painful for the ego to handle. But the cost of that comfort is your future freedom. You are trading your long-term agency for a temporary feeling of safety. I see people spending thousands of hours and dollars on certifications that will be irrelevant by the time they finish them. They are optimizing for a world that is already in the rearview mirror. This is the sunk cost fallacy at a societal scale. Just because you spent 4 years and 100,000 learning something doesn't mean the market is obligated to pay you for it. The market is a cold, calculating machine that only looks at the present and the future. If a generative model can do 90% of your job for the cost of a few cents of electricity, your 100,000 education is worth zero in that specific context. This is the reality check. Your value is not what you know, but how much leverage you can command. If you have no leverage, you have no power. We also need to address the idea that soft skills will save everyone. You hear this a lot, that empathy and communication will be the only things left. While human connection is vital, don't let that become a hollow excuse for technical illiteracy. If you have great soft skills but don't understand how to orchestrate the intelligence systems of the future, you will just be a very nice person who is increasingly irrelevant to the economy. You need both. You need the judgment to lead and the technical intuition to command the tools. Anything less is just wishful thinking. The world is becoming more technical, not less. Even the creative fields are now fields of technical orchestration. The most difficult part of this reality check is realizing that the gatekeepers are gone. In the old world, you could blame the system, your boss, or the economy for your lack of progress. But in a world of infinite cheap intelligence, the only thing standing between you and massive leverage is your own ability to learn and apply these traits. This is a heavy burden. It means if you don't thrive in the next decade, you can't blame the lack of opportunity. The opportunity is everywhere. It's literally floating in the air around us in the form of compute and data. The failure will be a failure of agency. It will be because you chose the comfort of the old world over the demands of the new one. Most people will stay poor and stagnant, not because the world is cruel, but because they are waiting for a world that isn't coming back. They are waiting for the normal to return. But this is the new normal. The good old days of stable, linear careers are a historical anomaly. We are returning to a world of rapid, chaotic, and exponential shifts. It is uncomfortable, it is brutal, and it is the truth. When you look back 10 years from now, you will realize that today was the moment the door to the old world began to swing shut. We often imagine that the future arrives with a great deal of noise and spectacle, but in reality, the most significant shifts happen in the quiet moments when we choose which path to follow. You are standing at a crossroads between two distinct identities. One path is the path of the passenger, the person who waits for the world to tell them what is valuable, who relies on the safety of yesterday's credentials, and who hopes that the wave of automation will somehow pass them by. The other path is the path of the architect, the person who recognizes that when the cost of intelligence falls, the value of human vision, judgment, and orchestration rises to the heavens. It is a choice between short-term comfort and long-term agency. I have seen many people choose comfort, and I have seen the quiet desperation that follows when they realize the world no longer has a place for their specific brand of effort. But I have also seen those who embrace the discomfort of the new. They are the ones who realize that the same technology that threatens the average worker provides the exceptional worker with the power of a 1,000-person company. They don't see a threat, they see a canvas. The next decade will be a period of immense separation. It will separate those who work for the system from those who own the outcomes of the system. It will separate those who are managed by algorithms from those who command them. This isn't about how much money you have in the bank today. It's about the mental models you are building for tomorrow. The most valuable asset you possess is not your current salary or your current title, but your ability to see the pattern of the long cycle and position yourself before the rest of the world catches up. I want you to reflect on your own life. Are you building a reservoir of knowledge that is slowly drying up, or are you building a river of capability that grows stronger as the tools of intelligence evolve? The transition is not easy, and it is not meant to be. It requires a fundamental shift in how you view yourself and your relationship to work. But the reward is the only thing that truly matters in a changing world: the freedom to remain relevant, the power to create value at scale, and the peace of mind that comes from knowing you are not a victim of the future, but a participant in it. The system as we knew it is over. A new one is being born. You can mourn the loss of the old rules, or you can be the one who writes the new ones. The choice is yours, but remember that in an exponential world, the middle ground is the most dangerous place to stand. Choose your path with clarity, stay grounded in first principles, and move forward with the quiet confidence of someone who has seen the future and decided to build it. The world is changing, but for the prepared, it is changing in your favor. If you want to continue exploring these long cycles and the systems that drive them, subscribe and join us. We aren't here for the noise, we are here for the truth of what comes next.